This book looks cool. The novel, A Modern Guide to 15 English Masterpieces, by Elizabeth Drew, author of the successful poetry, A Modern Guide to Its Understanding and Enjoyment. You know, Dexter, you ever drive through Dexter? It's near Roswell, Cattletown. Oh, look at these cool, in unpretentious, non-technical language. She shows you how to understand what you like, why you like what you like, how to appreciate sound technique, how to read with more enjoyment. That sounds great. Novelists and novels. Defoe, Moll Flanders. Conrad, Lord Jim. Huh. This is great. Joyce. Portion of the Artist. Virginia Woolf, To the Lighthouse. Yeah. This book's kind of cool. And I kind of like the library wear and tear. Where it goes a little big, but what do you do? It feels solid. It's got character. And, you know, reading about good books about books is the same as, like, good writing advice, basically, I think. It's like, here's how it's done well. Pay attention. You know, I love a critic's insights. That's a good read. Also, you know, you gotta have some sort of canon. You gotta have main text that you look at and talk about. I mean, you can't read everything, so things do become important. But I think it's cool that the canon is getting bigger, more diverse. I always buy books like this, but I'm disturbed to see a little bit of water damage in the corner here. It's like, why bother, you know? Can't have anything nice in life. I think this is from back when I used to push the books in on the shelves, and people would always set their drinks on the shelves, and then you'd form a ring of condensation. It did this to the bottoms of books sometimes. The whole family must pay for their crimes. Select one word a day from this book and write it on a card. Eccentrically. Elusive. I already know these words. Egregious. Mediate. Meretricious. I literally know all these words. That's great. Yeah, maybe this is like for high schoolers. No, I'm sure I learned a bunch if I read this whole thing. If I made a habit out of it. It's good to grow your vocabulary. It's cool to know more words. It's amazing how useful they are once you know them. Writers with limited vocabulary, it gets really obvious after a while. This is a good book. I've read this, I think. Fictions and the Figures of Life. I've read all these writing books. I've spent so much time reading writing books. Nonfiction overflow section. Look at that. What? It might clean off with some rubbing alcohol. Weird. This guy was the mentor of my mentor, so I said it before, but it's a beautiful looking paperback. Look at that thing. What an artifact. What an object. I'd cast it in a movie as a prop. I have worked on in a film's prop department before, and as a location scout. Basically, I was a production coordinator, so I had to do all the things. Long ago. But anyway, you know, I remember looking for like beautiful vehicles and finding them. Leaving a business card in their windshield, like, put your vehicle in our movie. But I mean, that's wild. I'm in a lineage of this guy because he mentored Greg Martin, who mentored me. So, does that mean anything? Nothing means anything. Oh, yeah. I always forget. This book's very special to me because I had it on my 7-month canoe trip with me. And I read it all the time and reread it. I mean, I had a few books. One time I tied up next to a buoy and wrote this. Reading from 73 poems next to buoy number 74. I was like, my life is a poem, man, my whole life. But there's some really good poems in here. Once you learn what he's doing and how he's got like a poem within a poem in parentheses, often, he's got a lot of good stuff. World War I ambulance driver. He was having fun with a typewriter. Here's some young marginalia from me. Every line perfect, amazing. And drew all over it? What the heck, man? A great man is gone, tall as the truth. Was who... I can read, I'm just losing my near vision. A great man is gone, tall as the truth. was who, and wore his mountains, understand how life like a now with one sweet sun in it, now with a million flaming billion kinds of nameless silent sky. At just 5 a.m. I hear eng which cannot sing glish sparrows say, and two or per who can and do fat pigeons coo, haps even four. Now man's most vast unmind by brained more than machine turns less than beast. At 6 the bells whisper asks of a world born deaf, heaven or hell. And my young self was all, every line's perfect, it's amazing. Yeah, I do remember being very moved by these poems. I guess I'm all jaded now. My heart is a shriveled up prune. Great. May I be gay like every lark who lifts his life from all the dark, who wings his why beyond because and sings as if of day to you. And sings an if of day to you. That's kind of nice. 73 poems. I broke this out when I was talking about those other two editions of Canterbury Tales, and then I'm going to read this with that. I just got this. It's so cool looking. I couldn't pass it by. I want to know all the things. This fella. Hello. I used to walk by his house all the time. I lived in Vienna for 3 years, and I remember seeing a plaque outside. I walked by like Mozart's house, Beethoven's house, this guy's house. This tree that every carpenter would nail and shoe repair would nail nails into for centuries, and it was in a clear pillar on the side of a building. Basic theories about psychological existence. Brilliant condensation of 40 years of writing and thinking by Sigmund Freud. Okay. Yeah, I love like good basic summaries of things, you know, because like there's a lot of complex topics out there, and Freud and his thoughts, that's one of them. My one question though is, how do you say that word? I've heard someone say primer once, and I'm like, oh no. The room started spinning. I realized I have no idea how to say that word. I've heard primer, I've heard primer. Is it a regionalism? I'm pretty sure the old usage was primer. This one's a more recent acquisition. I bought this at Quirky Books, this newish bookstore here in town. They have a good selection, but it's kind of a loose organization, I noticed. E. Cummings, 95 poems. More poems from E. Cummings. I think I have read this. We should all read more poems. Poems are great, you know. They bring a certain sensibility and a feel into your world and a lyricism into your writing if you're a prose writer. Here's Vonnegut kind of going off. I don't know. He's got crotchety modes that I'm not crazy about. Same with George Carlin. You know, and I always think of those two together for some reason. Similar, increasingly acerbic takes on modern culture. And I don't know, I kind of hate cutesy-wootsy made-up terms. Which this has some of that, but it's Kurt Vonnegut, so he pulls it off. I mean, I'm a fan. Check. See, look, I saw him live once. In 2002. It was cool. It's kind of a disappointing presentation. It was just riffing, really. He would say stuff like, never use semicolons. Like, give me a break. But since I recently lived in a cabin built by his dad and like worked at a camp that he went to as a kid, and heard stories about him and stuff, and old journals quoted about him, that was pretty interesting. I'm like, oh yeah, Kurt Vonnegut, he's good. He really is a good writer. Let's see if I can remember these terms. I don't remember wampeters, but FOMA are harmless lies told to children, and granfalloons are like false groups, like loyalties assigned to just kind of random groups. But I mean, I don't know. Those kind of groups are useful in a society, and he's all negative about it. Like people from Indiana, like banding together. He's like, that's goofy. It's a granfalloon. Vonnegut Jr., good writer overall. This is, oh, look at that beautiful green edging. That's awesome. Wow. 1974. That's so cool. This physical book right here is older than I am. That's crazy. It's been hanging out my whole life. This book's been existing at the same time. Wow. Basically siblings. This is my older brother or sister. Well, I sometimes say that this or that writer is the granddaddy of a soul for whatever reason. I just think that's a funny quote. John Lennon said it about Segovia. And Segovia was like, I'm not your grandfather. I am no one's grandfather. And he hated electric guitar. But Montaigne literally, he created the essay. He named it. It's just French for attempt. And I love essays. And I mean, he had the good fortune and privilege that he was super rich in a really chaotic time. During his time, the Catholics and the Protestants were in a crazy war all over France of the 1500s. I read a book about him recently called, I think it's called How to Be Good. That's that Nick Hornby book. Wait, something like that. I'll find it. This book, How to Live a Life of Montaigne. I read this a couple years ago, and it really gave me good context for his world. But I mean, I really do have to appreciate him as like inventing a really cool form. He took what had kind of previously existed as these books of loose collections, like Wunderkammers, wonder cabinets of writing, and I think they were called books of common prayer, and they'd have quotes and drawings and like just random things in them, and he combined them. And I've always thought it's really interesting that now the essay is fragmenting again. It's getting more modular. It's very common to see modular essays. But he wrote in a tower with a bunch of cats. And I think that's pretty cool. He wrote about all kinds of stuff. He created many conventions of the essay, like the on thing. The only essays I have in my book that have on in the title, it's like an organic on. Like On a Lake of Dreams. Good old Montaigne. Good old Penguin classics. I'm going to read a lot of Montaigne someday. I'm just going to read all the Montaigne. There's just a couple of books of his essays. Marco Polo, The Travels. You gotta love stuff like this. It's our world, you know? History. It's our epic prequel. I want to know it all. Do you think he would have ever dreamed that he would live on as a swimming game children play? You'll kind of be remembered. I mean, yeah, you're influenced historians and all that. But mostly it's a swimming game. What? My glories won't be sung across the ages? Well, the swimming game. But I love the book Invisible Cities by Italo Calvino, where Marco Polo and Kublai Khan are talking. So I think this would be a cool companion to read. But I was thinking that when I got this. Marco Polo. Can you read that? 1254 to 1324. Wow. Time really does keep slipping into the future. The Steve Miller Band was right. Like, you know, one day it's like Marco Polo, and the next day it's us, like hundreds of years later. And like, someday, yeah, we'll just be footnotes in history. I try to instill a sense of that in my students. Like, I was like, someday your high school is just going to be a smear of metal and rust on a windswept plain. There's going to be nothing here. Humans will all be gone. We'll all be dead. We'll be dead for what? I don't know. They'll just have their earbuds and no one's even listening. Well, here's a heartbreakingly beautiful book. It's like a moving book. I mean, just look at this thing. It's like a testament to just design and an object being beautiful. The Lonely Sea in the Sky. And what a title. Come on. The Autobiography of Sir Francis Chichester. I love long boat trips. I might row across the Pacific or something someday. That'd be fun. I like to do weird, crazy stuff. Or kayak from Anchorage to Russia along the Aleutian Islands and Aleutian Arm over a couple of years with a winter in Unalaska. Oh, I've thought about it. I bought the maps and the books. I'll get to those books eventually. You know, there might be a few adventures left in this guy. You know, I love the water. I don't know, the world's amazing. I love adventure and living in that mode. Working at that wilderness camp this summer, I caught it again. I felt that again. Oh, yikes. We did like week-long backpacking trips, you know, and walking rivers and just, I don't know, something switches over in my brain and I'm like, yes, this is right. You should be out in the world. So I just hope my book will be successful enough that I can like fund disappearing into the world again, you know, once my kids are grown. My youngest is 11, so like in 7 years. There's no doubt in my mind that The Lonely Sea in the Sky will become a classic of solo adventuring. I have a friend in town who sailed around the world when he was like in his early 20s, and it's like this huge, awesome thing in his history. And it's cool to talk to him about that. We'll read. Oh, I snatched this up when I saw it because this is by my friend's dad. He died recently, but he was a famous documentarian, Saul Landau. When he died, there was a New York Times obituary of him. Poor friend has had so much death in her family. But her dad was like this really awesome activist, documentarian, journalist. To Serve the Devil, Volume 1, Natives and Slaves, Paul Jacobs and Saul Landau and Eve Bell. Saul Landau, that's my friend Marie's dad. I couldn't believe this when I saw this at the Antique Mall. I grabbed it. Statue of Liberty, the Pitchfork. Classic. I watched a documentary he made too, it was pretty good. About Cuba. Documentary analysis of America's racial history and why it's been kept hidden. Okay. Well, something to read, for sure. I will. I think it contains a lot of primary documents. Looks like it has someone else's highlighting. Oh. That's fine. Growing Pains, the autobiography of Emily Carr. I'm always interested in autobiography and memoir. I'll give something a glance if it doesn't look too, well, amateur, I guess. I don't know. I'll read amateur stuff too, but sometimes amateur memoir can be a little painful. This looks like a legit work, though. Oh, girlhood in British Columbia. An autobiography of Canada's most famous woman painter. That's cool. A Clark Irwin Canadian paperback. I read this recently and I learned some interesting things from it. You know, this guy had a sweet money printing gig as he went on because he would just do interviews with people and then the interviews would, he's still around though, would get transcribed and each one would become a book. This is just one transcribed interview. And, you know, there's so many of these little Chomsky books, but it's great. They're a good read. You'll definitely learn some things. This one talked about capital flight a little bit and how in South Korea at the time of this book's publication, that was a capital offense. Like that's like a company taking their money and like going overseas so they can pay people non-union wages. That's capital flight. Wow. There's a lot of just damning statistics in here. I wish I had a better photographic memory. There's that Lemony Snicket character that has a perfect memory for what he reads. And I'm like, I'm so jealous of that. I want that. Yeah, there's stuff on NAFTA in here. All this dumb, boring stuff we have to know about. But I mean, you know, it is interesting, but it's like, I don't want to think about this stuff. I want to write poems in a meadow, you know? I mean, you know, that said, I can hang. It's interesting. I can talk this stuff. You know? And I can get outraged about things. Don't get me started on Guatemala, you know, and U.S. interventions there. All right, that's a pretty strikingly designed book. I love these bold color spines. Good old penguin. Oh yeah, America the Violent. I started reading this. Pretty damning, pretty convincing. But I was reading like 10 books at the same time. Got lost in the cracks. And then probably something violent happened to me, and I thought, I don't need to read a book about that. My house just got shot up. Or someone I know just got robbed. Or I just saw something horrifying in the street. Or, anyway, so I thought, why read the book when I can live the real thing? I don't need to see the movie Dottie I lived. Book freaks me out, and I could have sworn I already reviewed this and it was in a different section. I didn't move the books around. I did not move this to this section. This thing's following me. All right? Something really weird happens. This is a clue. Right? It's like that Ring video. I'm showing it to you, so this thing it'll leave me alone. Right? Sorry, followers. It's the price of watching this mid-level content. You have to be cursed by the ancient thing so that I can be spared. Of 11th century Aztec art. Awesome. I swear I did not move that Aztec book over there. That's so creepy. Well, if it happens again, I gotta burn this place down, I guess, and run away. Fear of my life. What if one day I just got sick of books and started saying only negative things about them? People would be like, this channel really changed. Stupid books. I hate these books. I hate them. Made of paper. Stupid things. Covered in different paper. Seen it. But really, it's the opposite. I love the books. My books. You can stay here for the night. That's fine. You can sleep right there. Pull a blanket over you. We'll turn the heater up. You're the best. I love you, books.